let us get started. I have a whole list of questions that folks sent in, and if y'all come up with any new ones while we're sitting here, I'm happy to answer them. And let me see what else. If I can give you any updates. Y'all might have seen that I have not been as regular posting YouTube videos lately. Probably I should talk about that a little bit. I'm totally intending to. I'm trying to every week record and post a video. It just seems like there's so much going on lately with the start of school and my kids and life in general. So that has been slower than I would like. I have to be in the right mindset to make a video. And if I'm too stressed or too tired or too anything, I don't have the creativity and I don't have the right, I don't know how you call it. It's not like a personality, but the right mindset to be on camera and conduct something well. So I'm hoping that I'll record another video this weekend and hopefully it'll be up early in the week. But yeah, in case you were wondering about that, that's what's going on. Fully intending to do it, just not able to for some reason in the last few weeks as frequently. There's still videos coming, just not as frequently as before. So anyway, let us get started with the topics of today. So the main topic that a lot of people were asking about, it was different versions of what do I do? I'm going to kind of extrapolate a little bit here. What do I do when I've become experienced, when the practice is becoming routine, when I feel I need more of some kind of challenge? And hold on a second, let me try to pin this video here. Okay, there we go. So what do I do when I need more challenge of some type? It's a great question. And I think that there are as many answers as there are people. It's very individual, very specific to the individual person, what direction to take your practice. So some people are interested in physically challenging practice because they have a goal to improve their flexibility or improve their strength or some kind of physical related goal. Or they might have another physical type of goal might be that they have an objective that they want to be able to do a headstand or like some kind of a goal posture that they're working toward. So there's that. And if that's the case, there are many ways to intensify your physical practice. You can, where do I even start? You can do, like, for example, something very straightforward. Like if you're working on forward fold, you can work on intensifying your forward fold by coming up with your arms fully extended. So you extend your arms by your ears when you're in the fold position, and you activate all of your strength so that you can stand up with your arms fully extended in that way. And that adds intensity to your forward fold. You can also get creative and do different variations. Like for example, one intensification of forward fold is to do the whole thing with the hands interlocked like this. So the arms start like in this position down, inhale, they come up, exhale, fold, and the hands remain like this throughout. That will also give you an intensification. You can intensify your forward fold. I'm not sure that I would recommend this, but you can by standing on a step or standing on a couple of blocks so that when you fold, you have to fold farther than you would if your hands are just coming to the floor. In other words, your hands are going below the level of your feet. And so you're intensifying by making the fold deeper. You can intensify by putting something under your toes. If you elevate your toes, the stretching effect of the fold is going to be intensified. You can probably imagine that, but in case you can't, you can test it and you can see what the forward fold feels like when you put something under your toes. Yeah, please.
What do you mean by that? Can I put a block underneath my heel and be on my toes? Is that what you're doing?
If you put something under your heels, it's actually a simplification. I mean, it's an interesting variation to try, but if you put something under your toes and lift your toes up, this will feel like an intensification when you fold. And so not something too tall. It would need to be something like a folded blanket or a folded towel. Yeah. So, there's some examples for forward fold, how you might intensify. If you want to intensify warrior, like the balancing type of warrior, warrior B, you can, go into your warrior A, and then you can go into your balancing warrior. And rather than doing it the way I normally teach it with the arms extended out, extend your arms forward. Palms face in is one level of intensification. Palms together, so like this way, is further intensified. You can also work on things like the back leg and the back hip, rather than like when you extend your leg back, rather than letting it elevate, ask the hips to be focused downward toward the floor. That will really build a lot of strength in your legs and hips and in your abdomen and in your back. So yeah, let me think about that. Maybe I'll put together a video of physically challenging practice to show you some of the intensifications, because I don't teach them very often. I'll have to load it up as a Patreon only video, because I don't want that available publicly, because for lots of reasons. I don't want people to hurt themselves. I don't want them to feel intimidated by this type of practice. But for this audience, I think it's fine. You have been practicing now long enough that you know how to modify, what an appropriate level of intensity is for you. And you know that you don't necessarily have to do something physically challenging to be practicing yoga. So I will work on that. Are there any, like while we're on this topic of physically challenging postures, are there any specific poses that you have a question about that you'd like me to talk through?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I have a problem with kind of overextending my legs. So if I'm doing something like triangle with twist, I have a tendency to kind of lock my knees back, with my legs straight.
Yes.
So I wasn't really sure, am I supposed to be locking them like that, or am I supposed to have a slight bend in the knee in triangle, or I'm not really quite sure what to do about that.
Yes, we should always try to have the tiniest bit of bend in the knees. When we lock them or hyperextend them, it can eventually be damaging to the joints and cause arthritis later down the road if you would do it repeatedly. Could possibly cause some fracturing. Different problems can happen, different injuries if you're repeatedly locking the knees. So definitely I recommend keeping a tiny little bit of bend. And you may have heard me talk about before, usually I talk about this more related to bearing weight on the hands, but when we lock the elbows, sorry, they both popped there. When we lock our elbows, we're allowing the bones, the skeletal structure, to support the weight of the posture. But when we bend the elbows a little bit, we're using our strength, and we're, increasing our strength by forcing the muscles to hold the weight of the body. So it's the same thing for the legs. If we keep a tiny bit of bend in the knees and we're using our muscles, then we're actively strengthening our legs, rather than, if the bones are supporting us, we're allowing the muscles to be passive. They are working a little bit, but they're more passive than if you were to bend your knees. So yes, and you may need to initially exaggerate the bend in the knee to convince your legs to do it, because they're currently accustomed to hyperextending, and they may not be capable of doing a tiny bend. So initially, bend your knees a whole lot, just to kind of make a new habit in your brain, a new samskara. This is called samskara. When we have a routine, a habit, something that we just always do, it's called samskara. That's
and is that the reason why we don't try to straighten our legs in a forward fold?
Yes. Yeah, there's a few reasons that I emphasize bending the knees in forward fold. One is so that we can access the strength better, the strength in the legs. Also, so we don't hurt our backs, and also so we don't injure ourselves by like overstretching the back of the legs when they're straight.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of people also are intimidated by that forward fold with straight legs. So I think in my teaching, I normalize bent knees because that's pretty much all I teach. And so people can feel more comfortable with that idea of bending the knees.
Mm. Thank you.
Okay, so that's all about
Can
the,
I- I'm
this,
sorry.
go ahead, yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I was thinking of doing the spreading my legs out a little bit more during forward folds, not a full wide leg, but just coming out a little bit more. The one, it's comfortable for me. I don't know if because of all the stuff I have in front, but I was even walking up the steps, I spread my legs and I'm a little bit more stable, I
Yeah.
guess. Is that okay? I mean, that's what I
Absolutely.
wanted to start doing. I didn't know if I was going backwards or if that was, because you told me, you say that wide leg forward fold is more intense than
Yeah.
the regular one, right?
Mhm. Yes. That's such an interesting question. So if we keep the feet together, touching each other, that gives one kind of challenge. If we take the feet very wide, that also gives a challenge. In the middle, depending on the person, it may be a simplification or an intensification. So just see what you think. See what feels, I mean, I've kind of retooled this in my brain as of today, like finding the right practice for you. Certainly, we know it needs to be comfortable. We know it needs to be accessible. It's something you can actually do. But the third component, which I hadn't really thought about today, I mean, I had kind of on some level, but it got solid in my brain today, is that we need to find the right level of challenge. So, something could be accessible, but too easy. Something could be, clearly too hard. We want to like really fine tune, refine the practice so that it gives you the appropriate amount of challenge where you're getting stronger or you're getting flexible or you're getting some kind of benefit from it. But also it's not beyond your capability, because when we go beyond, we lose the ability to get the benefit from the practice. That's a very subtle concept, but I think if you've been practicing for a long time, you can understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So Nikki, one thing I notice with forward fold is if I keep my feet together, I get no stretch in the back of my legs because I can't get down low enough because my belly hits my thighs. But if I widen my legs just a bit, then
Yeah.
I'm feeling the stretch all the way down the back, which I think is more of a benefit to me. I don't know, maybe I've missed something in the
No,
in
that's
the
exactly
middle.
right.
But for me, like you tell us to sit that time when you stopped the class and you were like, open your legs and stand comfortable. I don't know if you see, I tend to put my legs together and be okay. And I can feel it when I go down. I don't know what that's about, but I know my legs wide is very comfortable. Like I walk up the steps with my legs wide because I'm able to use the strength in my legs to pull myself up. Like that's my goal, to be able to get up the steps. I can do it now, but I want to just be better at pulling my weight up the steps, like elevating it up and everything. Yeah.
I think I have a couple of different ideas here. One is we have to find the correct width of stance that helps us feel most stable. So it'll be different for everybody. And then second to that is, depending on the width of your stance, the muscles and the way you use your muscles will be slightly different. You may access more quads or more hamstring or more your calf or more a muscle in your hips or your glutes. But every different little detail of your posture affects how your muscles work. So like if your toes are slightly turned in, your muscles in your legs work a certain way to help you walk. If they're pointing forward, it's different. If they're slightly angled out, it's different. If it's wider, it's different. Narrower, it's different.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah,
Like,
all
I
of that
never
affects
thought
your
about-
muscles differently.
Oh, I never thought about that.
So, you know, that may be part of the reason why when you're walking, for example, on stairs, for you, it feels most stable to have your feet a little bit wide because that's the strongest way that your muscles currently work. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now let's talk about different types of like non-physical aspect of the yoga practice, because sometimes we're practicing yoga more for the mindfulness or more for, you know, like improving our concentration, our mood, some of these more subtle benefits. I always do this when I say subtle, I don't know why. But if we're working on those kind of benefits from the yoga practice, then we don't necessarily need a practice that's physically stronger. We need something different. So we can work on more breathing. We can work on more meditating, more relaxation practices, and other mindfulness based details within the asana practice. For example, you probably have seen here or there that sometimes I count the length of the breath while we're doing the asana practice. So we do like inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. The idea being that on 1, we're at the first position, and then we're kind of measuring and calibrating the volume of breath and the degree of angle of movement so that we're very tuned into what we're doing. When we're paying attention to that level of detail, it's not possible to let your mind wander off to your, you know, what you need to buy at the grocery store or whatever other things might be in your mind. Oh, I need to remember to take the trash out. Tomorrow's trash day. You know, like these are the kind of random thoughts that pop into our brain when we're not being, you know, 100% mindful. So counting can be one thing that you do. You also could do nyasam in your asana practice. So, you know, we're counting the quantity of breath on the fingers. So that means like if you're doing warrior, it's inhale, you know, the hand is like this and you're coming up to the position, exhale down, second one, you know, to this position. And you can, you know, work on your yoga practice in that way. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do. You can, you know, do seated breathing practices. And I have a number of videos that introduce an introduction to breathing and then different techniques that you can use so that you can find which ones are your favorites and are most effective, most natural to you so that you can sit and work on your breathing. There was another thing I was going to talk about. Different ways to practice mindfulness. Let me pause there. Do y'all have any questions or thoughts?
What was the other one you said about counting as you move? So this is 1 and then maybe 2 if we're going to do that. What's that called? What's that?
So are you talking about when I assign a number to the posture?
Yeah.
So yes, sometimes I do this. I do this a lot with kids or people who have very busy brains. I'll say like, I'm just going to stand up here so I can show you better.
That's me.
My plant is in the way a little bit. Let me turn this. Give me a second. Okay. So I'll do like, we're going to call this position 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. And so then it becomes kind of a memory game. And that can be one way to keep your mind engaged in what you're doing. So like triangle, since it's asymmetrical, it gets tricky. It's 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 1. Yeah, so that can be a third way that you use counting in the asana practice. The other thing that I was going to mention, now it's dark, let me come back over here. The other mindfulness thing that I forgot temporarily a minute ago is at some point, you may graduate to such a point where you can't tolerate me teaching anymore. Like you get tired of hearing my constant cues, or any teacher, right? You don't need that anymore. Like, you know how to do all the sequences. Your mindfulness has grown beyond a class setting, at which point it may be the right choice to start practicing independently. And that's when, you work one-on-one with a teacher who designs the practice for you and gives it to you so that you have something to follow. You're not just randomly making it up on the fly, whatever comes to you in the moment. Like, you have a plan, a strategy. You could even write it yourself if you feel capable of doing that, but have a plan. And that way, when you have that plan, you can breathe at your pace. You can do some of these mindfulness techniques without getting out of sync with the teacher, because you're guiding your own self. I see lots of interesting expressions. Any questions or thoughts about this? Comments?
I think that I like to practice with the videos, because if I try and do it on my own, I kind of get impatient with myself to finish, and therefore I sort of do everything too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it harder to concentrate. And I posted something earlier in the week, or maybe it was last week, that I was, my head was just going crazy. And I did that. I can't remember which practice it was now. It was
the energizing morning yoga, I think.
I think it was a
No?
modern Zoom where you
yes.
alternated us between doing a warrior posture and doing Parshva Uttanasana. And that really made me concentrate to make sure that I was doing the right pose. So I think that was the best thing for my mindfulness, really, having to keep thinking, which one am I doing now, Yes.
Yeah. That's a perfect example of, how everybody needs something different in the yoga practice. Some people really thrive on complicated sequences. Sometimes, like, especially when I used to teach in person and I could see people well, I can see if your mind is here or if your mind is somewhere else. And, because I work with people for a long time, I know, based on my experience with them, what they need in order to get their brain here now. And so for certain people, I know, this person's not here with me today. They're like, their brain is somewhere else. I know that I need to do breathing. I know that I need to do a complicated sequence. I know I need to do balancing. Like, it just depends on the individual person. So it's great for us to figure out what we personally need, so that when we're having a really stressful day, a really busy mind, racing thoughts, can't sleep, all of these kind of things, what your thing is that you should do to help move your brain to a different pace, a different level. Very good. Okay. I'm laughing at myself because I'm so passionate and enthusiastic about all of this.
That's a good thing.
Don't mind me. Okay. All right. So we talked about physically challenging practice. We talked about the challenge of mindfulness. Any other kind of challenges that you're interested in implementing in your practice?
Can I ask one more question about mindfulness?
Yeah.
Because where I probably struggle the most with it is, and we talked about this the other day a bit, is in a restorative relaxing class. Because I think I recognized myself immediately when you said complicated movements. My mind can get razor focused when I'm doing that.
Good.
But you asked me to lie down for 10 minutes and be comfortable, I will plan dinner for the next 7 days type things as I'm sitting there.
Yeah.
And one thing I find hard is I relax when I'm in those positions like you're supposed to, and then all of a sudden they become less comfortable. Like, because I'll have relaxed down, and then all of a sudden I'm not.
Yeah.
It's not supporting me the same way. Should I just be moving and trying to readjust at that time? And what do I do with my brain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so start with, because remember, Kelly, she said you don't supposed to go to sleep. So that kind of tripped me up. So let's add that to what Kelly said, because I'm like her, planning my menu in my head. I was very disturbed that I could not relax. That was like a problem for me, because it's not healthy to be on all the time. and
Right.
everything, and just go off when you sleep for 6 hours and then you're back on. Like, that's not a healthy balance to me. So what Kelly said, added on, you're not supposed to go to sleep. So how
Yeah.
do you prevent that from happening?
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about all of this. So what Nikki is referring to is in class, was it, I don't know, it was one day this week in my like regular classes that I teach every week. We were talking about relaxation, and in fact, Jan's class on Thursday evenings where she teaches gentle and relaxation. And I talked about how when we're doing yoga nidra is, it translates kind of as sleep or sleepiness or relating to sleep. So yogic sleep is what yoga nidra relaxation is. But you're not meant to actually go to sleep. You should not accidentally fall asleep in the yoga nidra practice or the relaxation practice. You should be present and conscious and consciously relaxing. If you're falling asleep, it probably means that you're sleep deprived and you need to work on your sleep at night so that you're not so exhausted. And then when you do your relaxation practices, you can actually be awake. Okay, so now moving to Kelly's questions. Relaxation, I'll start by saying relaxation practices perhaps are not correct for everybody. People who have really busy brains sometimes get really stressed out trying to do a relaxation. It's actually agitating rather than relaxing. So that's one thing to know. We don't all have to strive to be able to do relaxation. But we all do have a common goal of being able to have a calm mind. So we can pick from all the tools of yoga to figure out what is my correct tool to help me calm my mind. Is it a physically challenging practice? Is it complicated sequences? Is it breathing? Is it a meditative walk? It could be anything. So we have to find what's best. That said, if you're trying to do a relaxation practice and you find, okay, let's talk about first your mind wandering off. And then we'll talk about if your body becomes uncomfortable. So if your mind is wandering off, you need to give your mind a job. So if we don't give the mind a job, the mind will do whatever the heck it wants, like a wild monkey. But if you give this wild monkey a job, then it knows it needs to be doing whatever, X, Y, and Z. So what kind of job can you give your mind in the yoga practice?
Can I ask one question with that though? Because you were
Sure.
talking about that. My job is to plan my menu. That's what my brain wants to do.
That's a wrong job. You need to give
Okay,
it
so
a
let's define
Yeah.
what is a good job. Because I got off and I was like, she doesn't understand. My mind thinks planning out those things is the job that it's supposed to be doing when my body isn't moving.
Yeah.
See?
So if your mind is planning a menu, for example, or planning a whatever, your brain is thinking. We don't want to be thinking. That's not the job. The job is keeping the mind present in the moment. So we have to find something slightly mundane to focus the mind on, a slightly mundane kind of job. It could be, I'm listening to the teacher's voice. I'm hearing what the teacher's voice sounds like. I'm going to keep myself present by hearing the inflection in the voice, the pauses in the speech, whatever it is, completely focusing on the mind. On the breath, on the words. Or you could give your mind the job of focusing on your breathing. The words are coming in, the teacher's words, or sometimes there's silence, but I am focusing on the smoothness of my own breath. I'm focusing on the length of my inhales and exhales. I'm counting them in my mind, even as I'm lying here doing relaxation. I'm focusing on the sensations in my body. When I'm lying here, I notice that my left leg is rotating out more than my right. I'm noticing that my shoulders are relaxing. So that's not like actively thinking. It's kind of it's a little bit less, I don't know what, it's less thinking than planning a menu, like just observing what's happening with your body. So these are the kind of jobs you want to give your brain. Yeah.
Is that what you were saying just then? Is that what your internal dialogue would be saying to yourself?
If necessary, yes. So if you're trying to do this activity of focusing on breathing, if you suddenly realize you're planning Wednesday night's menu, then you say, mind, you're doing the wrong job right now, come back, focus on breathing. Inhale, exhale. So there's a little bit of internal dialogue for redirecting yourself, but mostly you should just be actually doing the thing without dialogue. It's a process. Like, it may be a whole lot of dialogue for the first 2 months of working on this,
Yeah.
of redirecting. But what we practice becomes our habit. And so if you keep making the effort to redirect your brain toward the right kind of job, then it will become more capable of it. And you'll be able to do that right kind of job for maybe 1 minute at a time. And then you're going to have 1 minute of interruption, and then you'll redirect. And then after some time, maybe you can keep doing that job for 2 minutes, and just slowly over time, you get more skilled at it. It's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot.
It just seems easier to just let your mind wander.
Here, but what you practice becomes your habit. And so if you let your mind become an expert at wandering, that's what it's going to do all the time. Yeah.
So I think the one thing about using the body sensation is learning to do it without judgment. Because I think that's what ends up hitting me is I do it like, oh, why does that hurt so much? What have you been doing? You're not very good at that. Or
yeah, but that's turning
some sort
into
of judgy
thinking.
thing.
Yeah, that's turning into thinking.
Oh,
Which
okay.
we're trying to not do. We're trying to not get into that cognitive brain kind of activity.
Yeah.
So yeah, the judging and letting go of judging is a whole project in and of itself. It's kind of like when we start to pay attention to the breathing, we can't help but change it. You can't just like sit and observe the breathing, how it actually is. Naturally, we start to like manipulate it. So it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah, so paying attention to the sensations of the body and just noticing. So the redirection in that case may be a reminder to yourself of just notice. That may be your redirect. And then you also asked about what happens if your body becomes uncomfortable. So, oftentimes I think teachers might tell you, or you may have developed an expectation of yourself that you should remain there, even if your body's uncomfortable. I'm going to take a small tangent here. I remember 100 years ago when I used to practice Bikram yoga, the hot yoga, in that room that's 105 Fahrenheit.
You did? You did that?
Yeah. When I was like in my early 20s, before I knew better. Yeah. When I used to practice that, I remember very distinctly that the teachers would tell us, even if there's sweat dripping down your face, you cannot wipe it. You can't adjust your clothing. You can't adjust your hair. You have to just do the yoga practice. And so now I think differently, because now I think it's very important to be comfortable and not cause yourself harm or pain. And harm can even be like there's sweat dripping down my face and it bothers me. And so you need to do something about it so that you can, regain your calm mind and not have that like, it's bothering. So I say, if you're uncomfortable, absolutely move to a totally new posture if you need to. Yeah. Okay.
So
Go ahead.
I'm trying to think of a time when I have not had an internal dialogue going on in my head. And apart from probably when I'm asleep, I don't think it ever happens. So with the breathing practice, what about using some sort of mantra? I was looking,
you can.
Last week my head was going crazy. I was looking on YouTube for other things because somebody had recommended trying Yoga Nidra, and a couple of other things were recommended. And I came across, I think it was a Yoga Nidra video anyway, and he was saying, focus on your belly rising and falling. And I think he was saying, so your navel goes up and then your navel goes down.
Mm-hmm.
That was, you were supposed to sort of use this as a kind of mantra to also to make sure that you were kind of breathing into your diaphragm and not just chest breathing.
Good.
But I mean, does that count? Does that count as being mindful, or is that kind of, is that as bad as having an internal dialogue going
No,
on?
no, that's fine. So paying attention to your belly or your chest expanding and contracting is better than planning a menu. It's more mindful, more
Just saying
present.
to myself, belly goes up, belly goes down. That's
Totally fine. It's
good.
repetitive and kind of mundane. It's a good job for your brain to do that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You also mentioned this term mantra. So let me just expand on that a little bit. Chanting. So mantra is something that you repeat. There's this term called japa mantra. Japa means it's repeated. And so that's like chanting. So mantra and chanting, you chant mantras. There's like a relationship between these two words. And chanting is also a very good mindfulness practice. Some people are really into chanting. Some people are a little bit into chanting. Some people don't want to chant ever. But if you do, something you can work on, universally beneficial for everybody and appropriate for everybody, is the mantra of Shanti. Shanti means peace. And we're trying to establish a peaceful mind, so it's appropriate. And the way that you chant it, if you want to, we normally do it 3 times. So we say, if you want to, you can add Om in front. So you say, Om Shanti. You say the Shanti 1 time. And then second time you say it 2 times. And there's an extra syllable in here. There's an extra He syllable you add to the last Shanti. So the second round you say, Om Shanti Shanti. Third round, you say 2 Shantis and 1 Shanti. So it's Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And this is another way to give your brain a job. You're paying attention to the sounds you're making, the pace, 1 inhale, and then, you chant the whole thing, whatever it is you're chanting. So this is another excellent mindfulness practice for people who, are comfortable with it.
How about the humming? Is the humming too also something you can do?
Absolutely.
Not out loud. Sometimes you say we can do it in our brain. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah. So that's normal inhale, hum instead of exhaling, either out loud or, like you said, in your mind. And that's also excellent. It's a great mindfulness practice. What you're paying attention to there is the sound that you're making. You're paying attention to your breath and, the duration of the hum sound. What else are we paying attention to? The vibration feeling in your throat. Yeah, okay, people are just moving around. So yeah, humming is also great. Yeah. For some people, that's more comfortable than chanting words.
Yeah. I find that sometimes when we're actually doing the asanas, that I find that I'm humming on the exhale, just kind of without thinking about it.
Yeah, good.
Is that a natural thing to do? Is it a good thing to do, or?
Yeah, it's not common, but there's no harm in doing that. It's a beneficial thing to do. Yeah, great.
Is it humming, Leslie, or like sometimes I feel like I can hear me exhale. I don't know if that's humming. Like I can hear myself not, but I hear myself exhale. Like I'm not intentionally doing that. Is that okay? Is that
Yes.
okay? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me talk about this a little bit because, this may help clarify some things. In yoga, we have a type of breathing called Ujjayi breathing. Ujjayi. And this is a breathing that makes a tiny sound. It makes a tiny sound in your throat because you're slightly constricting your throat. I'm going to just get close here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear me do this, but when we start working on Ujjayi breathing, we typically are doing only the exhale as constricted until you get comfortable, because it kind of tickles and it's kind of weird in your throat. But once you become accustomed to the exhale, then you can begin working on the inhale as well. So it's kind of like This constriction is kind of like if you were trying to fog a window or a mirror, it's that. And it's just the tiniest of sounds. You have the idea. I won't do the breathing for you, but we breathe in and out through the nose while making that constriction in the throat. Sometimes you'll go to a yoga studio where someone thinks that they're an advanced practitioner if they do that breathing super loud. And so you'll hear them, like making this. You're an advanced practitioner when you can do it very subtly so that only you can hear it. So a beginner would breathe very loud, and then with practice, you can refine it. We used to have a man who came to the studio who was extremely loud, like the whole class could hear him. It was many years ago, but I remember him. Okay, wow. This is a deep discussion about all the ways to kind of refine and, add extra detail, extra interest, advance the practice, if you will. Lots of mindfulness things we've talked about. We also talked about physically challenging practice. And I've made myself a note to make a video for this audience. Don't go share it outside of this audience, this group, which has how to intensify the practice. So I'll teach in that video, I think lots of things that I normally teach. I'm just going to teach more physically challenging versions, and you can watch that and see if that's something that you want to incorporate. And once you know them, you can do them anytime. You can do, for example, a challenging triangle pose in a, when I teach it in a different video, you can do the challenging version if you want to. Okay, over here in the chat, Carla has written, I sometimes say things in my head. So in your case, something like breathe, focus. Yes. Yeah. So this is a great addition to the discussion that we were just having about breathing and mantra. So mantra doesn't necessarily need to be in Sanskrit. You can have your own mantra in English or any other language that you want. And it could be something like inhale, like you're thinking in your head the word inhale while you inhale, exhale while you exhale, or something like that. She's written here, breathe in focus, breathe out judgment. You can absolutely come up with your own mantra that you use in your practice, especially like during relaxation. That would be a great place to do it. Don't do it during asana because it's too many things. It's giving you a busy brain to try to pay attention to the sequence and your alignment and your strength, and also breathe and also try to think of these mantras at the same time. It's too much. Yeah. Okay, good. Any other questions or comments about how, like, what elements can we add to the practice when you're experienced? Okay, cool.
What about adding in a stay? Like we don't seem to have done it much lately, but when you sort of stay for an inhale and an exhale in a position.
That's another way that you can add interest to your practice. And so if you are doing a personal practice, without me, you can add those, like maybe you do the first 2 rounds with no stay, the second 2 rounds with a stay of 1 breath, and the last 2 rounds with a stay of 2 breaths or something like that. Yeah, and sometimes I do teach those in classes and videos. I taught them at the outdoor class that I did this morning. Those stays can be for the purpose of mindfulness and concentrating, and like if you're doing it yourself, you have to concentrate enough to remember, I'm on round number 2, and so there's no breath. Now I'm on round number 3, and there's a stay of 1 breath. So it gives you something, an extra job for your brain, but it also has physical benefit. So yeah, that's also an excellent practice that you can use if you're guiding yourself with practice. Okay. Anything else before we go into this long list? I'm going to have to just pick a few because we only have about 12 minutes left. But I have all the questions that y'all sent in. So let's see. Let me just read through real quick. Okay.
Would doing yoga, the amount we do, would that intensify too? Is that a kind of challenge, or you said like challenge and everything, or intensity by how many like days we do it, or how long we do it? Like
Yeah,
going from 15 to maybe 40 minutes and stuff? Is that also like a challenge or intensity? Okay.
yeah. I mean, you can increase the number of days that you're practicing. You don't need to practice like multiple times per day, but if you could do one practice like 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, that can be a way to deepen your practice. You'll naturally learn just by doing the practice. You will learn things about yourself and about your body and about your brain when you do that. You also can challenge yourself to do a little bit longer practice, again, within reason. Nobody needs to be doing 2 hours of, asana practice every day. Maybe up to an hour, 45, 50 minutes. If you're practicing every day, is more than enough. Even 30 minutes is enough if you're practicing every day. Oh, you know what? One more detail that I should mention here. Okay, so in yoga philosophy, they talk about life as being basically in 4 stages. We have the stage when we're children, adolescents, then we have what they call the householder stage, and then the retirement stage, and then the stage where you're preparing for the end of life. Probably we're all in the householder stage right now. Like we're, in society and doing our stuff, having jobs and running our house. During the child stage of life, we're meant to do a lot of asana because we're young and strong, body is growing, mind is busy and jumping around all the time. And so the kind of yoga that's appropriate is to do asana practice, physically challenging postures, lots of movement, fast, all of that. When we move as we move, through this progression and we become older, then the body is not as robust anymore. So the proportion of yoga to mindfulness practice changes, like physical asana practice to mindfulness. So in the householder stage, you'll do a little bit more of mindfulness practice, a little bit less of asana. And then when you're in the retirement stage, more mindfulness, less asana. And then finally, in the last stages of life, we don't need to do asana practice anymore. The body is old and tired. We're just focusing on our mind and being calm and peaceful to prepare for our transition out of, this life and into whatever's going to happen next. So another way that you can challenge yourself is to start to work on more mindfulness and less asana.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I understand that, but some of us in the household stage still needs to work on that asana because we kind of played around in the childhood stage. Maybe ate what we want, didn't exercise enough. So now we're in the household stage and we're like, uh-oh. We need to get ourselves together so we can relax in that retirement stage. So what do we do about how do we stay in that, I don't know, realm, but also like we need a little bit more asana without hurting ourselves and stuff.
Yeah, just adjust your proportion to what's appropriate for you. So continue doing your asana that's a little bit strenuous to give you the physical benefit, and also work on some mindfulness so that your mind can be calm and you're not planning too many menus.
Is there a certain age or is there a way that we would know? Like when it's time, everyone is different, but like
everyone's different.
Do a certain pose or something is painful.
There's no hard and fast numbers. It's just according to how you feel, how your body feels and how your mind feels. Yeah. Okay, good. So let me finish kind of scanning through all these questions that are over here. Lots of mindfulness, experienced yogis. Okay. Margaret had asked this very fascinating question that I'm going to attempt to answer. She wrote, I would like to know what signs to look for that one has attempted more than appropriate beyond the obvious, which is shaking or acute pain or being out of breath. Sometimes I do not notice the effects until later, especially when it's related to the knees or it affects her breathing. Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, this is fascinating. And it's let me just finish reading the last sentence so that I have it all in my brain. Trying to trace back the precise cause when it is delayed like that is difficult. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is a great question. And, you know, a sign of a person who has good body awareness, like, I don't know, let me not try to elaborate on that because it's too subtle. I can't even like figure out how to talk about it. But okay, so one thing that Margaret mentioned here is paying attention to the breath. So like if we're going from gross to subtle, obviously if something's hurting you, stop. You know, that's probably clear to most people. Shaking can also be a sign, maybe it's slightly more subtle, like you're not actually experiencing pain, but if you find that your body is shaking or your breath is shaking, there's an indication that the thing is too strong. Let's talk about the breathing, because this can be a very subtle thing that we can start to pay attention to as we really improve our mindfulness and our self-awareness, especially maybe if you're practicing by yourself without a video, because the video gives distractions. There's distractions of seeing what the person's doing, hearing what the person's doing. You may or may not be following at the right pace. That also gives you a distraction. But if you're practicing independently by yourself in a quiet place, you can pay attention to a whole lot more about what's going on with you. You might notice very subtle things like your breath becomes shorter. If your breath becomes shorter, this can be a sign that you're overexerting. If your breath becomes harder, like, you know what I mean, like harder breathing, that can also be an indication of doing too much. Those are the most subtle things that I'm familiar with about how to pay attention to what's too much. You know, granted, at this stage where we can pay attention to these subtle qualities of the breath, we're pretty well beyond ego, but ego can be another thing that we pay attention to, like, why am I doing this pose? Am I doing this pose to show off? Even if there's nobody else here, I'm just showing off for my own self. Or am I doing this posture because it's actually beneficial for me? So, you know, that can be kind of checking your ego can be a different way that, you know, that we keep ourselves safe. And it could be like, I'm like, for example, if you're doing Parshva is what comes to mind. So the posture where it's a forward fold with one leg forward and one leg back. Ego can be involved even in a very subtle way. Like last week when I did this posture, I was able to touch the floor. So today I'm going to touch the floor also. Maybe your body's not actually capable of touching the floor today, but your ego is making you touch the floor because, I don't know, because you did it last week and you feel you should be able to do it. So that can be another pretty subtle way to pay attention and just be careful that you're not overexerting. I can't think of anything beyond that. Ego, habit, breath, those are the main things that I can think of. Aside from that, if you're already paying attention to all of these things and you're still sometimes having a delayed pain related to the yoga practice, it may mean that the practice is not correct for you, or you need to just scale everything back a little bit. Just scale everything back to like 80% or 75% of intensity. See if that solves the problem. If it does, you can start adding back a little bit of intensity on certain postures, and then you can start to see where your limit is of what the appropriate versions of the postures are for your body at this current stage. I hope this helps. Margaret, I think you're there, so let me know in the comments if that covers it, if it's helpful. I'm going to think about this more. I need to, I think, pay attention in my own practice.
That ego thing is
about
really
that.
good. That
What's
ego
that?
thing, the ego thing is good. You should mention that because
What is
that's
it?
the ego
Ego.
one. That's a really good one. When you were talking, I was like, yeah, you should really mention that in class once in a while because it's that's a dangerous one for me anyway. It's dangerous. It's really, yeah.
It's yeah. Again, this is one of those things that's appropriate for people. It's an appropriate concept to talk about with people who've been practicing a lot. People who are beginners won't understand what that means at all. Like you have to have some good experience with yoga and some good experience with yourself to be able to even know what that means. Okay, apparently I did not answer what you're looking for. So let me follow up with you, Margaret, in an email, and then maybe I can try again. I don't know. This is a subtle question. It's honestly a hard one for me to answer. Okay, we're just about out of time. Okay, the rest of the questions seem to mostly have to do with modifications and how to do certain kind of postures. So I think what I'll do is I'll just write up a series of posts for y'all and post them in the Patreon group and on the Facebook group also, to answer these remaining questions, probably with a photo or maybe a short video to help explain whatever it is that the person's asking about. Okay, good. Any lingering questions? This has been a fascinating discussion. I'm having a ton of fun. Thank you for all of this. Everybody good? Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you soon, one way or another.
Thank you, Yolanda.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye-bye.